Hi, I just wanted to go over pages 23 and 26 to point out some places that I thought might be a little confusing or the kids might need some review. So let's look at page 23, and at the very top, it says compare each set of numbers by writing greater than, less than, or equal to. So it's been a little while since we've gone over this, but let's take a look at the first couple. So 205 and 210. So 205 and 210. We want to see which one of these is larger. So, first things first, we want to look at the hundreds place. Since this is a three-digit number, the hundreds place is the highest value my number could go. Let me get a different color here. So, let's look at the hundreds places in both numbers first. If one of these numbers, if one of these digits is larger than the other, then I can stop. I don't have to go any further because 5 will always be bigger than 2, or 2 will always be bigger than 1, and so forth. But in both of these numbers, both have a 2 in the hundreds place. So both are 200 something. So the hundreds place is not going to help me out because 200 and 200 are the same, they're equal. So now we have to move to the tens place. So in the tens place in 205, there are zero tens, zero extra tens. There are definitely tens inside of 205, hopefully you know, but there are no extra tens. But if I look over in the tens place in 210, though, there is one extra 10. Well, one will always be larger than zero. So that one extra 10 will make 210 larger than 205. I don't have to keep going to the ones place because tens are always going to be bigger than ones. So I can stop there. So I would draw this as with my gator mouth eating my larger number, my less than sign. So I would read this as 205 is less than 210. I say less than because my smallest number was first. 205 smaller is less than 210. Let's say that these numbers were flipped around. Let's say we had 210 and then 205. I'm sorry if my numbers look messy. It's just really hard to draw with a mouse on this program. All right. So we look at the hundreds place. Both are the same. So that will not help us figure out which one's bigger or smaller. But the tens place will because those are different. There's a 1 in the tens place here and a 0 in the tens place here. 210 has one extra 10. 205 does not have an extra 10. It definitely has a 10, but not an extra 10. So I would draw my gator mouth eating 210 because it's a larger number. So my gator mouth would be eating 210. So I would read this as 210 is greater than 205. Since my larger number came first, I would say 210 is greater than 205. Okay, so I believe this middle part will be fine. I did this part down here because it's saying use a place value chart to help you add or subtract. That might be a little confusing on how to fill out, but I wanted to show you that it doesn't have to be. So it just wants you to break your numbers into tens and ones just to sort them and put them in the right column. In 14, that's made up of 110 and four ones. So I put 110, four ones. In 35, it's three tens, five ones. So if I add four and five ones together, I get nine ones. If I add 110 and three tens, 10 and 30, I get 40 or four ones. Sorry, four tens. So, but make sure you're not writing 40 because 40 tens and four tens are very different. So it's four tens, nine ones, which makes 49. If I'm subtracting, it's the same thing. 79 is made up of seven tens and nine ones. 21 is made up of two tens and one one. If I need to take, make sure you're not adding. Look at that sign, that's subtracting. If I take a one away from nine, I'll have eight ones left. If I take two tens out of seven tens, I'll have five tens left. Five tens and eight ones makes 58. All right. So let's take a look at 24. Now, up here it says there's really two parts to this set of directions. It says add to find the two problems that have the same sum and circle their sums. So you're going to have to add up numbers 1, number 2, and number 3 and then look at their sums. There should be two sums that are the same, and you're going to circle those. I'm not going to do number 1 and number 2 just because there's no regrouping that has to be done, so it should be a lot easier, but I will look at 25 plus 15 plus 38. So let me show you how I would solve this. So 25 plus 15 plus 38. And I'm just going to go back and double check to make sure that I didn't make a mistake writing those numbers. I want to be precise. 25, 15, 38. Perfect. Okay, so this is how I would use it, or how I would solve it. I would actually use the vertical addition method. So I know that just from looking at this problem, I see something that I know. I see that 5 and 5 is a doubles fact, and 5 and 5 make 10. I also know that if I add 8 to 10, I will get 18 as my sum. Now I can go and I can add my tens up. I know that 10 and 20 make 30, or 3 tens, and I know 3 and 3 is a doubles fact. So 30 and 30, or 3 tens and 3 tens, would make 6 tens. I just got to make sure that I write that number correctly. 6 in the tens place, 0 in the ones place. I have to show that correctly, otherwise my answer will be wrong. And then I just add my ones and my tens again. 8 ones and 0 ones make 8 ones. 1 10 and 6 tens make 7 tens. So I have a sum of 78. And then I want you to add numbers 2 and number 1, and then go back and circle the sums that are the same. Okay? So looking at this one here, it has your base 10 blocks drawn for you. So it looks like you're adding hundreds and subtracting hundreds. Here it wants you to do 300 plus 500, which I believe that you can do. And I also believe you can do 700 minus 300. The question that it's asking is, how can knowing 3 plus 5 help you solve 300 plus 500? And it asks the same thing for 7 minus 3 and 700 minus 300. Well, I truly believe that if you think long enough about this, like I think even just by reading that, a little light bulb goes off in your head. You just may have a hard time explaining in words how you know it can, how knowing 3 plus 5 and 7 minus 3 can help you. So the answer that you could give, something like this, make sure that you use place value in your answer, because place value is the key. So you could say, well, I know that 3 plus 5, 3 ones and 5 ones make 8 ones. So if I add 3 hundreds plus 5 hundreds, I must get 8, but it's going to be 800. If I have 7 ones and I take 3 ones away, I'll have 4 ones left. But if I have 700 and take 300 out, I'm going to have 4 left, but it's going to have to be 400. So something like that would be a good explanation. Okay, now let's look back at 25. So this top part, we've seen this page in a previous video because I was explaining this problem down here, but it's the break apart method that was on a previous video that I made, and it's on the sheet of addition strategies in your packet. It just looks a little bit different. Instead of them, drawing the lines and writing your tens values here underneath, it's just going sideways. So it broke 20 into 20 plus 1 and 42 into 40 plus 2. So you could just go ahead and do 1 plus 2 is 3, and then 20 plus 40 is 60 to get 63. Here it's the same thing. You could do, and I wish it would let me zoom in when I'm doing this, just for some reason it won't. Okay, so you can break that 30 into 32 into 30 and 2, and that 46 into 40 and 6. Then you can add your ones and your tens together, 70 plus 8 gives you 78. All right. As far as skip counting by fives, this would be most helped with those counting collections I talked about. So getting your kids to count objects, and it doesn't have to be a huge amount. You can start off with 50 at first and just have them count by fives. Tell them that they can only count their objects by fives. So group them in the fives. And then have them write on like a note card, or if you're able to write on the table and erase it without it leaving a mark or anything that can be easily cleaned, have them write how much they have after each group. So, like, have a cup with five in it, then have another cup with another five, but underneath that they write 10. And just after they finish counting all their objects by fives and they have the numbers written out, just have a discussion with them about, you know, what do you notice about the numbers? What's happening in the ones place? What's happening in the tens place? And that'll be very, very, very helpful with not just counting patterns, but also adding, subtracting, just overall number sense. Like counting collections are a big deal, and they're easy to do, and you can do them with anything that can be counted and grouped. So it doesn't have to be a special tool or anything. So I'm going to not go over that. But if you need me to, you can message me and I will make a video for you. Or if enough people message me, I will make a video about it. I just feel as though, as a class, we're strong enough in this area to where I can move on. Okay, so let's look at 26, last page. So it's asking, what is 10 more than 192? This is a toughie because you have to use place value and you have to understand what happens when you're grouping ones into tens, tens into hundreds, and so forth. So, what is 10 more than 192? Hmm. Let me see if I can clear that off. So, let me make 192. So, there's 100. Let me get the 9 tens for 90. Twenty, 30, 40. Nope, I don't want you to do that. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and two ones. Okay, so the question is, what is 10 more than 192? Think of it as 192 plus 10. That's all that's happening here. Is it going to let me move stuff? Okay, perfect. So if I know and understand my place value very well, then this will be easy. But if I don't, then this will take some practice to understand. So remember that in 100, there are really, sorry about the phone, there are really 10 tens. There are 10 of these right here inside of this. So really what you need to think about is that I have 10 tens here. And I have 9 tens over here. And 2 ones. If we were to add one more 10, what would my number be now? Well, if I think about how many tens I have altogether, if there's 10 here and 9 here, that would make 19 tens, right? So if I added one more, which is what's happening here, if I added one more, how many tens would I have now? What's 19 plus 1? It would have to be 20, but not just 20, it would have to be 20 tens. So if I added one more 10, I'd have 20 tens. So now I have gone from having 100, 9 tens, and 2 ones to having 100, 10 tens, or 20 tens, and 2 ones. So, an easy way to see this number would be just like if I have 10 ones, I want to regroup those 10 ones into a 10. So, it's easier to see. If I have 10 tens, I want to regroup that into 100. So, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take these 10 tens and turn it into a 100. So now I have two hundreds, no extra tens, and two ones, which would mean that my number is 200, zero extra tens, and two ones. So if you understand how many tens are really inside 192, just adding another one will be no problem because there's 19 tens inside of 192. Adding one more would just give you 20, and you keep your two ones, so it's 202. 20 tens and two ones, 202. Okay, so here it's asking 153 minus 10. So instead of adding a 10, I'm taking one away. This will be a lot easier than the last one because in the last one we had to cross over hundreds, which can be tough if you don't have a solid understanding of place value. But if you do, then you can handle it just fine. This will be a lot easier because I'm not having to cross 100s. I'm just going to have to take away a 10 from what I already have. Let me just start that over. So let me make 153. Okay, so here's my 100, my 5 tens, and my 3 ones that make 153. The problem was asking what is 153 minus 10? So in the last one, when I was adding a 10, it was 192 plus 10. This is minus 10, so I'm actually taking a 10 out. So if I were to take one of these 10s out, what would I have now? Well, if I understand place value, I know that I just went from having 5 extra 10s to 4 extra 10s, but my 100 and my ones digit stayed the same. So I'm keeping the 1 in 100, and I'm keeping the 3 in the ones place, but instead of having 50, I have 40. So 153 minus 10 is 143. Okay, here, what is 100 less than 458? You're taking 100 out. 100 plus 629, you're adding 100. Let me show you that. Adding 629 plus 100. I don't think I have enough room to show 629 very quickly. So I'm going to draw it this time. So let's say this is 629. Uh, okay, so 629 plus 100. All that means is that I have 600s, two extra tens, nine extra ones. If I am adding 100, that means I am getting another extra 100. So I just went from 629 to 729. My two tens and nine ones stayed the same because I didn't add any tens or ones when I added 100. Okay. And then down here it says 3 students wrote a number to match the picture. Anne wrote 45. Ben wrote 450. Chi wrote 405. So, looking at this mat, who was correct? Who wrote the correct number to show what this number is? So, let's take a look at it. How many hundreds do we have? 4. How many tens do we have? 5 extra tens. And how many ones? 0 extra ones. There's definitely ones inside of this, but there's 0 extra ones. So which one of their students wrote the number correctly? Well, to write this number correctly, you would have to have written a 4 in the 4 in the hundreds place, 5 in the tens place, and 0 in the ones place. So Ben was the one who wrote the number correctly. And why are the other two numbers incorrect? Well, there's a lot of different ways we can explain this. Anne wrote 45. So Anne, you could say, only wrote 4 tens, wrote 5 ones when there were only 0, and then didn't write any for her hundreds digit. You could also say that Anne forgot her 0 for the 0 ones. She left that off. If she would have added her 0 in the ones place, she would have written it correctly. So she wrote 405. She got her ones place and tens place mixed up. That happens all the time if we're not paying attention. So she wrote it as if there were 400s, 0 extra tens, but 5 ones. So hopefully that made sense. I'm sorry about how long it was. I was just trying to cover all of those pages. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know and I'll try to help as soon as I can.